Guys, how are we doing? So today's podcast is going to be a little bit different. So I'm not joined by a guest. Okay, so it's going to be me on my own, which can be interesting. If you've ever tried to record yourself solo, it's difficult because you can't bounce off other people. All eyes are on you. You get crazy awkward. You turn really weird, and you say stuff that you probably wouldn't ordinarily say in a conversation. So that'll be fun. I'm going to do it in one take, so I'm not going to edit anything. So if I do say something that's utter bollocks, will try and dig myself out of that, but I will mess up my words, no doubt. So in terms of today's podcast, then it's going to be Q&A. So I put out a question the other day to get some questions for me to answer on here. Instagram is my usual platform, and I try and put out a Q&A like every week, every 10 days, just to get a little bit of an opportunity to speak through some of the problems that athletes, coaches, physios have. But Instagram isn't always the best modality to go through those things. You know, people want a quick, short and sweet answer. It needs to be flashy, something they can screenshot. But it doesn't always give you the ability to talk through some of the nuances, okay, give your perspective, a little bit of, you can't really put your tone across, you know, obviously you can record videos, but so essentially what we've got is a few questions that I'm going to run through today. If this goes well, I will do more. If it kind of sinks, then you'll never hear from me again. So what we'll do then is the first question from Joe was, what is your coaching background and how has it influenced your philosophy? Okay. And I really like this question because I do think those things are connected. Okay. So your coaching background, so where you kind of learned your coaching practice, did you have a coach when you were growing up? The people you were around, the environment, all those things, they all influence how you kind of do things today. And I'll give you a brief timeline of my background. My timeline in itself. And I think a lot of the things I say all make sense in terms of how I think about problems and how I try to problem solve and generally just how I approach working with people. So for me, I guess my first opportunity to coach did my level 3 BTEC course when I was 17, and I absolutely butchered it. Did really shit job, and I think it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't smart. It was more I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I didn't apply myself to getting a good mark. That's what everybody will say now, but generally I think I was just a lazy shit. Didn't know what I wanted to do, so just didn't put in the effort. Everybody from the BTEC course then went to university afterwards, saw my mates and stuff, and they were having a great time. I was like, shit, you know, that's bad. Okay, I need to do something. I had one more free year of education. So I went to the same college. So it was Grimsby College. That's where I'm from. And I did a sports therapy course with a personal training, like top up. Okay. So it was basically sports therapy and PT, which was awesome. Okay. So you got your level 2 gym instructor, you got your level 3 PT, you got your Swedish, there we go. First one, you got your Swedish massage and your sports massage, Swedish. So yeah, you got those quals, which was great actually. So I really enjoyed it. And instantly I was like, I felt good at it. I had a nice confidence boost. I was getting into lifting at the time. I really enjoyed understanding the behind the scenes stuff. I also got a job at the college working in the gym. There's a lot of people that applied for it, and I managed to get through. So that was also a nice little confidence boost for me pretty early on, when I think I probably needed it to push me in this direction. So the actual course itself was okay. Let me think about this. The sports massage and Swedish massage side of things was really good. Okay, I got a lot from that. But being brutally honest, I think we all know the issues with the fitness industry when it comes to PT and gym instructor, and what we actually learned, some of the role models we had was pretty shy, to be honest with you. But that is what it is, you know. And I think that was like a big pivotal part, because I think it should have been better. So I think I tried to excel above that a little bit. But you know, I was one of the guys in the gym, so I was the main staff member at the time. and everyone was doing, the bro splits, which is cool. So the chest tries, back buys, all that stuff. And I was the one that was doing that reading behind the scenes. So I was into Charles Poliquin at the time. He was like a pivotal figure in helping me try to understand things a little bit deeper. I was also all over T Nation. So a little bit of bro science, a little bit of hard science, I guess. And I was the guy that's kind of bringing those concepts to the gym floor a little bit more. So introducing like mechanisms of hypertrophy and actually breaking down mechanical tension. What does that mean? Okay, and then telling people about it, shaping their program a little bit. You've got metabolic stress, you've got muscle damage, all those things. But that was good. I think that time was pretty pivotal for me because it allowed me to actually coach people. And, I was slowly shifting towards it being more sports science based, strength and conditioning based. At the end of that course, I wanted to go to university, but because of my BTEC scores, I couldn't because I didn't have high enough UCAS points because I fucked it. So then I went to the Access to HE course. So it's basically A-levels for adults. So I paid for that myself. It was like $1,500 and then went to uni. So I went to Sheffield Hallam University, which is awesome. Really good place. Really good sporting university, really good kind of social programs, really good strength and conditioning internship. Sheffield Hallam University has a really good reputation for putting out good practitioners. There's a lot of great people that have come through that to go on to great things. And, I kind of say it's one of the powerhouses of strength and conditioning internships, for lack of a better phrase, but I would say that is how it is. You've got Loughborough, you've got Sheffield Hallam. I can't really even think of any more. St. Mary's, do they have one? I'm not sure. Those are the two that kind of always kind of jump out to me, but I know other places do have internships and have really successful internships. So me saying that isn't that they were the best, it's just the ones that are kind of at the forefront of my mind. And the internship there is great because it gives you a great experience just to get hands-on with coaching, get stuck in, make some mistakes. Ultimately, some of the athletes you're working with are very social at nature. So never going to be at the Olympics, never going to win huge medals or anything like that. So it gives you an opportunity to really hone in your coaching skills, make some mistakes, make a lot of mistakes, learn from them, make more mistakes. Okay, that is learning. So that was not my first experience of coaching then. So I had Sheffield Hallam and we had a work placement in my second year. So part of the sports science courses, you have a work placement for 6 to 8 weeks. No, it was 8 weeks. No, here we go. You had 8 weeks off, okay, to do your work placement, but you only needed to do 6 weeks. And I was lucky enough to get accepted for the GB boxing work placement, which is based in Sheffield, which was cool. So I was working under Matt Campbell. I was working under James Herzheim. I was working under Adela Carter. They were all around at the time. So basically got through into it, just basically went there, tried to learn as much as possible. But ultimately, as an intern, as a work placement student, you're in the shadows a little bit. Okay, you're in the shadows, just kind of watching what goes on, asking a few questions, trying to understand a little bit more. And that was huge for me because that was my first experience of a really high performance environment and how they approach things. The guy, Mark, who's leading it at the time, he's in a slightly different role now. He's not as hands-on with coaching, he's in the technical lead role, I believe, but he's a great role model. And some of the things that I really liked about the way he approached things, and this does feed into my philosophy now, is super humble guy. Okay. Really, he's upfront with his mistakes. And I think that's huge. I think that just makes you super approachable, relatable. People feel at ease around you. Okay. So really kind of humble, will own those mistakes and won't kind of finger point and stuff. And that's huge. And I've been in situations, I've been in roles since doing that work placement there, where it's the complete opposite, where people are finger pointy. They try and blame people for things, and it's toxic. It's toxic, and nothing ever moves forward. Nothing ever changes. People get the back up, and there's ultimately a lot of ego that goes on. An ego is not necessarily a bad thing. We all have an ego, but sometimes you have to keep that in check for the greater good, essentially. Okay, so GB boxing was a big one for me. So that was a really big, it was like the top of the mountain, I guess. It was the peak. It was the highest thing I'd seen so far, and that was great. I then got a job at Sheffield Hallam, so I was kind of an assistant, but kind of a lead for like a really short period of time as I was kind of finishing my masters, which was cool. It's when there was a lot of changing over going on. Actually, there was at Sheffield Hallam at the time, they were going through a total restructure. It seems like they're always going through a restructure, actually. And what this basically meant is none of your jobs are safe. Okay, you're up in the air. You might have a job, you might not. We might make you reapply for your job, we might not. And if you've ever been in that situation, it is awful. It was like a big strain mentally, because it's like, well, fucking, what am I doing then? You know, am I just sat here doing nothing, just in limbo? Awful. Okay. In the end, ended up getting a job at Warwick University, which was great. So I was the lead S&C coach there. What I learned from this, I was under a guy called Nick Manning, who was the performance sport manager. He was the previous lead S&C coach, so very S&C minded, but kind of got the taste for a little bit more management, strategy, influencing things from a more global level. Because generally that is the way it is when you're involved in performance. As a coach, you influence the athletes. You may be able to influence people to the side of you, but you're generally not going to be able to go to the head of sport and say, look, this is the way I think it needs to be. It just doesn't happen. Things don't change. And through speaking with Nick, I think that was kind of one of the reasons he wanted to progress and get higher and higher, because the way you're really going to influence the total landscape and the long-term vision of the university is by being a higher member of staff. And Nick was also a great at his job, did a really good job with those things. And one of the things that really kind of stuck with me from my time at Warwick was it was through COVID. And I saw some examples, and I'm never going to name names. I saw some really bad examples at that job, at other jobs along the way. So I've had a few part-time roles, starting in and out. I've had a lot of internships as well. I've seen some examples of awful practice with the athlete ultimately being the one that gets hurt by it. Okay. And I guess a way of explaining this is everybody always says it. Everyone's like, oh, we put the athlete first. Athletes are our number one concern, mental health, well-being. Bullshit. Okay. I've seen a lot of examples where that is exactly not the case. And I think it just seems to be one of those things that people say. And I hate it. It really grinds my gears, because you're in this job to hopefully make a difference to people in a really positive way. But when push comes to shove, you got to jump through a lot of red tape. You got to jump through a lot of approval from line managers, particularly in a big organization. And I do think that even though people say athletes are our first concern, that isn't the way it goes a lot of the time. In university sport, I've seen it in pro sport, I've seen it in the private sector as well. I don't think it's anything specific to like a specific domain, but it's one of those things that does sit with me and influences my coaching philosophy, because that is honestly like my number one. Okay, the athlete comes first. The way we approach our problems, it needs to come back to them. It needs to be helping them, not hindering them. Okay. So yeah, and then I guess moving through to some of the more recent things, I've obviously created a business. I work part-time with a lot of different organizations now on like a consultancy basis. And that's one of my non-negotiables, is the decisions we make ultimately have to be because of the athlete. Because I do feel like there's a big exploitation, and maybe that's a really harsh word. Maybe that's like, oof, it sounds really dirty. But yeah, for me, it ultimately comes down to that. Okay. I really enjoy my job. I love my job. So to see the customer or the client not get served fucks me off. In terms of my actual philosophy itself, then getting through to the nitty gritty of how we actually approach sports performance, it's hard because you could put me in a lot of different situations, and I think the philosophy does change. I don't think it is one stable thing. I think the athlete should get information on why they're doing what they're doing, because I think that helps buy-in, which feeds into enjoyment, which feeds into them making good decisions when you're not there. I think we need to create self-sufficient athletes so that, again, if you're not there, if you're ill, if you are no longer working together, they can still push training forwards. So there needs to be a good education element to it. I think there needs to be, like I said, fun. There needs to be enjoyment, and not everyone's going to go into the gym and be like, yeah, this is it. This is what I love to do. But I think if it feeds into the overall, if it makes them better at what they do love to do, play sport, feel healthier, then I think, you can kind of work through that. So there may be a little bit of you giving them stuff that they do enjoy to get them to do the stuff that they don't enjoy. Okay. So a classic example of this is like arms and core. Speak to, I'm going to say lads, but, it's definitely a female thing as well. Rugby boys. Okay. You get rugby boys in the gym. You're like, right, we've got some sprints, we've got some conditioning at the end. It's going to be a pretty tough session, but we've got arms and core at the end. It's the icing on the cake. It's the dessert at the end of the session. They go mad for it. That's the last thing they remember. Great, I had a really good time. Walked out of gym feeling swole, all that good shit. So I think that's an important part of it. I think giving the athlete a little bit of what they like just to help with long-term adherence is a big part of the way I do things. Obviously, it's not all the icing on the cake. Nobody wants to eat 90% icing, just 10% sponge. You do need to give them stuff that's actually going to make them better as well. I think some of the other things that I think are important for my coaching philosophy is communication. It's kind of like I'm interviewing myself at the moment. I'm giving you those answers. I'm a really good team player. Now, I think communication is a big one, depending on your role within the organization. So I guess perfect example at the moment for me is I work online with a lot of guys. And for some of these guys, they're kind of on the fringe of being a really good player, but not quite at the point where their club has the ability to highly invest in strength and conditioning coaches, physios, head coaches, those types of things. So for me, when I'm working with these athletes one-on-one, the communication channel is literally me and the athlete. Okay. So that is it. It's just me and them. So communication is really important there, because if they don't ever speak to me and I'm giving them a program, it's like, well, I don't know how you're getting on, mate. Like it's difficult. So that the communication piece needs to happen in order to get the most out of it. And then taking that through to like, let's say, so I work at Sheffield College basketball team, basketball. And we have more communication lines. Okay. So we have me, we have the athletes, so a big team of athletes. We have a physiotherapist. We have 3 coaches, actually, 3 tech coaches. We then have the NGBs that also has a head physio who has a head of S&C. So there is a lot of different communication lines. Okay. And they're all pulling hopefully in the same direction. But if they're not, that communication piece is really going to be important to kind of ironing out some of the nitty gritty and how we actually tackle a problem. So communication, again, huge. What else? And ultimately, I think it's understanding what they want. Okay. My coaching philosophy is meeting the athlete where they're at. Okay. And it's meeting the person where they're at. So if you're working with somebody who's Gen Pop, don't try and sell them, a gold medal at the Olympics, because that's not what they want to do. If you've got a recreational athlete that just wants to be a little bit better at sport, they want to be in a little bit better shape. They've also got a holiday coming up in Ibiza. Okay. They've got a lot of different things that they want to work through. So you've got to kind of try and meet them where they're at. Whereas maybe you'll have an athlete that is like, if I do not win, that is a failure. Okay. In which case everything needs to be geared towards those 1%. And it's my job as a coach to figure out what those things are. What is the overarching goal? So then I can program something towards it. Okay. So yeah, there's a few thoughts on, I guess, my coaching philosophy. And you could probably ask me on a different day, and I'll give you a slightly different answer depending on kind of what's fresh in my mind. but I'm curious to other people's as well. If some of that stuff really resonates with you, let me know. If there's some of that stuff where you're thinking, fucking, that was waffle, then give me it. Let me know. Second question then was contrast training, overrated, and how do I use it? Okay. So contrast training being the method of training where you pair together two exercises. Okay. So a heavy exercise and then a light, fast, explosive exercise. So a good example of this is a back squat and a counter movement jump. Okay. So the back squat being heavy, the counter movement jump being light and explosive. The reason why you would do this, okay, is the heavy loaded exercise feeds into making the central nervous system more efficient, okay, gets it primed. Essentially, it tricks the brain and the body into producing more force on the counter movement jump. So you will see a small increase in performance on the second exercise, on the explosive exercise. And there's a really sciencey answer to this to do with mind blank then. I did it in my dissertation. I'm trying to bring it up now. So it's the phosphorylation of actin and myosin chains. I believe I may have butchered that, but there is a sciencey answer that goes into it. And do I think it's overrated? It's just a tool. It's like me saying to you, are hammers overrated? It's like, well, for what? You know, is a hammer overrated for breaking eggs to make an omelette? Yeah, probably. It's not needed. Is it overrated when trying to peak an athlete towards competition? Probably not. It just depends how much importance and what you think you're going to get from it, which will determine whether it's overrated or not. The ways I use it then, exactly as I said there, I will use it as a little bit more of a peaking. Yeah, a lot of the time I'll use it as a peaking method. So as we're getting closer and closer to competition, there's going to be a lot of an emphasis on trying to freshen up the athletes, get them to experience some really high intensities and some high speeds in low volumes. And that's one of the ways I would do it. So in order to get the most from it, and this is, there's a few bits of research on this, but in order to get the most from it, you want to try and pair two exercises together that are similar in nature. So a back squat and a counter movement jump, a bench press and an explosive press up. And that is generally how I will use it. So I will go pretty heavy, but not max, not to failure on the first exercise. So let's say, for example, I would do 2 reps on 87% of 1 rep max on a back squat. Okay, so it's heavy, but for 87% of your 1 rep max on a back squat, you could probably grind out 4 reps. Yeah, let's say 4 reps, for example. So I'm leaving a few reps in the tank. It's heavy, you're working hard, but you're not digging yourself into a hole and causing a lot of fatigue. You're then going to rest. You're then going to give your body an opportunity to basically catch its breath. Okay. And this is where the post-activation potentiation element comes with it. There is a sweet spot in terms of how long you rest between the 2 exercises. Loads of research. Some research says 12 minutes. Some research says 2 minutes. So you're probably never going to work that out, to be honest with you. I think you're probably just going to rest a minute or so and then go into it. I think probably like 2 reps on a back squat, rest 60 seconds, 30 seconds, just to get your breath back, and then go into 5 reps on a counter movement jump, rest for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then repeat. That's a simple way of doing it. You could do the same with the back squat and the bench press and the explosive press up. They say that in order to get the most from contrast training, you want to be well trained to begin with. Okay, you want to be an athlete that has the ability to produce a lot of force in order to really kind of override the central nervous system to get the most out of that explosive exercise. You don't want to have a really untrained athlete, getting them doing a goblet squat with 10 kilo and then getting them to do a jump, because they're not going to get anything from it. You could still do it if it works just to pair those exercises together from a logistics standpoint, a space-time point. You can do that, but chances are you will not get the same percentage of increased, performance as somebody that can squat 200 kilo is incredibly fast, incredibly explosive, they may get an extra 2% on their CMJs from doing that. I do sometimes, I've paired this with really sport specific movements as well. So using things like overcoming isometrics as a way of, so treating the overcoming isometric, so producing a lot of force against an object that isn't going to move, okay, and then feeding that into an explosive exercise. So the example is, I still work with a fighter at the moment, work with him online. And one of the things we was working through is an overcoming isometric, where you've basically got your arms out straight, okay, and you're twisting in towards the wall, okay, and essentially you're trying to push the wall. You're not going to be able to. The wall's in place. You're going to be really strong. So your upper body, your core, your obliques is pushing maximally. You're then going to have a little bit of a rest, and then you're going to feed that into the contrast method. The second exercise is going to be a medicine ball side toss, okay? So you're going to be doing a similar type of movement. Your body is tricked into producing a little bit more force on that second exercise. I've also done it with some bag work, okay? Some medicine ball throws, heavy landmine punches, those types of things. I've played around with a lot, but I do think ultimately it comes down to experimenting. It needs to be the right time, the right place to get the most from it. But it is just a tool. Okay, next question. What are my thoughts and reflections from starting a podcast so far? Really good. I really enjoy it. I like speaking to people. I like speaking through strength and conditioning, coaching-based topics. I do just like speaking to people. I really like the creative side of making something from scratch. I love Canva. And this is like just another form of that, you know, a way of just putting, you know, I know people don't pay for the podcast, but putting a product out there is cool. You get feedback from it. Some people like it, some people don't. You then get to refine, make it better, feed it into next time. So yeah, it's good. I think it's going to be a slow burner as well. You know, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be like, this is a super successful thing, but that's not the objective. You know, I do just enjoy the process, which is good. Some of the challenges are the things that you wouldn't really expect. So when you're doing a podcast, you want to try and make sure for the most part that you've got a soundproofed room. And in this house, we have like really thin walls. So you can hear outside a lot. I live on a school road. And so when the kids come out at about 3 o'clock, it goes off. Okay. There's screaming, there's shouting, there's kicking off, there's all sorts. Okay. So me trying to avoid the times when the kids are out. Next door's just got a trampoline, so it's constant squeaking. Luckily, I haven't had this, but my girlfriend, she works from home. She's a research assistant, does a lot of phone calls, and she said she was on the phone and she had the window open, and two lads, probably like 15, 16, were on the bikes riding past. And this is explicit. They're riding past, and one of them went, "Fucking hurry up." The other one shouted, "Fuck off, I'll shag your mum." And as soon as she told me about it, I was mortified, because I was like, it was about an hour before I was supposed to be doing my first episode, and I was like, if I've got a guest on, they're giving up their time and I have to restart because of that, I would be absolutely mortified. So yeah, that's one of the things I need to be. That's one of the things I'm having to think about, is when I actually schedule podcasts during the day, because of soundproofing. The editing side of a podcast is quite lengthy, actually. I would say for every 1 hour of podcast you put out there was probably 4 hours of work. So when you see the hour, you know there's probably 4 hours going on behind the scenes, and that's editing, that's making things good, that's putting questions out there for the guests ahead of time. There's all that collaboration, you know, the social media side. So yeah, to be honest, I really, really enjoy it, and I'll keep doing it, you know, and if people get something from it, if it kills a little bit of time when you're walking the dog or you're driving to work, that's absolutely cool. The next question is, it's super broad. I just got training in season, question mark. Okay, so it's really ambiguous. Okay, so training in season. I know this guy, and I know he's a rugby boy. Not so we're just going to take over this podcast with rugby-based questions, but he's a rugby guy training in season. Okay, there's a few things you kind of want to think about in season, and ultimately your goal is rugby. Okay, that's the thing as well. I'm going to have to meet you where you're at. Is your goal to be the best rugby player you can be, or is it to be the best rugby player you can be while still trying to maintain a load of strength, while still trying to get bigger, while still trying to have a good social life, all those different things. Okay, so taking that into consideration, if I was just going to answer this from a stance of training in season for somebody who's trying to be the best rugby player they can be, your goal is rugby. Okay, your goal is rugby. Everything needs to basically be looked through the lens of, is this hindering or helping me to be a better rugby player? Then some of the things that I see people doing wrong is you probably need to let go of the in-gym performance numbers and exercises as well. So for example, some of the exercises we would choose from a programming standpoint, let's say back squats, deadlifts, trap bar, heavy bench press, all those exercises are great. They're big bang for your buck compound exercises. Okay, at times they probably put a lot of load through the body, okay, which is good because it gives you a big stimulus, but it also gives you a lot of fatigue as part of it. Okay, and Mike Israetel, who is part of Renaissance Periodization, I don't know if anybody knows him, he speaks through the concept of stimulus to fatigue. Okay, and he calls it a ratio, so stimulus to fatigue ratio. And our objective is to hopefully choose the exercises or the modalities that have the biggest stimulus possible with the lowest fatigue ratio. Okay, so a back squat, for example, a really heavy back squat, loads and loads of stimulus for the knee extensors, the quads, the glutes, the lower back. Great, it's a lower body exercise, loads of stimulus. But there's also a load of fatigue there. Okay, you're not going to be able to do back squats indefinitely forever before your fatigue starts to dig you into a big hole, which affects your performance, but also injury risk. Okay, so there's that. Are there other options? Are there other options that can give you a really good stimulus effect with lower fatigue? Okay, and a good example of this is something like a leg press. Okay, so a leg press gives you this, maybe not the same, but it gives you, comparable amounts of stimulus for the lower body. But because you're not using your upper body to stabilize, your lower back isn't a factor, your core isn't a factor, you're locked into one place, so there's not really a stability element. It's mentally a lot easier to get yourself amped for a set of 5 on the leg press than it is a back squat. So the stimulus is still pretty high, but not as high, but the fatigue is a lot lower. Okay, in which case that could be a good option for you in order to keep your lower body strength up there. In season, you want to try and balance it. So you need to work with your coaches around you to get a schedule together which works. Okay, so let's say you have a game on a Saturday. Okay, Sunday you're going to rest. You're probably going to be hungover. Monday you may get in. Okay, you may do a little bit of light uppers potentially, or a little bit of a flush out. I would say an uppers flush out recovery based session is going to be pretty good. Okay, then going to that Tuesday is probably going to be your heaviest day of the week for me. That's probably when you want to get some sprints in, get some high intensity lower body work in, potentially get some high intensity upper body work in, and you're probably going to have training that evening. Wednesday, probably going to be off. Probably have off. You may do something light. Thursday is going to be a low volume, high intensity based session. You might sprint again. You may do some acceleration based work, so generally less risky than the max velocity stuff. You may hit uppers again. You may hit uppers every day this week. It just depends on how you basically do things. Friday, you may have off, or you may have like a little bit of a priming session, and then Saturday you play. Okay, hopefully what you kind of got from that is you want to try and schedule your week in a way where you can balance stresses. Okay, there's a fluctuation there of ups and downs. It's not all go 100%, go 100%, go 100%. Whenever you train, you are training at the expense of the next session. You're training at the expense of something else. You have a limited resource pool to draw from. Okay, and if your objective is to be better at rugby, you want to make sure you're better at rugby. Other things, training in season. Yeah, just going back to that exercise selection piece. Don't push through pain. You're going to be sore. You're going to have niggles. You're going to be sore in a lot of different areas that you wouldn't be sore out of season, in your off season. So don't be afraid to get rid of the bench press. Can you look for something that is potentially a little bit more shoulder friendly? Can you go for a floor press just so you miss out that bottom range? Generally that end range is a little bit uncomfortable for some people. If you've got a banged up wrist and holding a bar's tricky, can you use wrist wraps to get through it? Can you use a neutral grip bench press or dumbbells? A press up's a good way to go. If none of those things are available, can you go for an isolated movement like a chest fly, just looking for ways of working around and not making anything worse? Another thing to think about is I'm a big fan of using neck work with contact athletes as a way of basically building up some good robustness around the structure that ultimately controls your head. Okay. So whiplash, getting a stinger, concussions, all those things that we know about, neck work can just help a little bit. But I would approach it in a different way in season than when you're off season. Okay. I think the best time to get some exposure to neck work is when you are furthest away from taking a tackle. Okay. So that could mean doing it straight after a game, just getting a quick hit of some neck work, just so it doesn't impact you for your next training session. And what I mean by this is neck work is great. It's really protective in that sense. Okay, this goes for any structure. This goes for hamstrings. This goes for anything. When you train it, you temporarily weaken it. Okay, so if we think about the way we train is we go in, we apply a stressor, we temporarily get worse, and then we come out the other side of it better. Okay, so supercompensation theory. When you do neck work, you temporarily weaken that structure. So if I was going to do a load of neck work today, and then I went into a game tomorrow, that'd be a bad idea, okay? Because the neck's going to be a little bit more exposed. It's not going to be as strong. Same for hamstrings, okay? So you want to try and pick a time where you have the longest duration between doing it and actually playing the sport or taking tackles. Same for boxing, same for MMA, jiu-jitsu, all those things apply. And I think one of the best times to do that is straight after a contact-related session, because generally you will have the next day off, okay? And it's really hard to fit everything into a week anyway. Cool. Obviously, that was a really broad question, training in season. So I think next time I do these, I will try and ask for a little bit more context on those, just so I can basically, give a little bit more of an insight into that. So I'm going to leave it there then. So I have rambled on a little bit. I've gave a little bit of perspective on, my coaching background, coaching philosophy. I've covered contrast training, covered a little bit of starting a podcast and my thoughts so far, and some of the issues I actually have to face when putting that out there. Cool. So I may do these in the future. I may not do these in the future. But if you did enjoy the episode, do let me know. It's useful for me to hear some feedback. And if you have any questions that you think will be useful for me to kind of go through, then do let me know as well. All right. Cool. Well, thank you very much. And I will speak to you all soon.